Hey, Raphael, how are you today?
Doing great, Yvonne. How about you?
I am so amazing. I just don't even know what to say. And I'm so excited. I'm so excited for our guest today. I cannot wait to talk to Melissa Steger.
She is one amazing person. I can see why you're such a big fan, always have been. Just incredible experience and the results. I cannot wait for our folks to hear her.
Yeah, so Melissa Steger recently retired from UT System, one of the largest public university systems in the country. But man, does she have a lot to share about the importance of communication, even instilling a little bit of competitive nature in large systems. It's just incredible the kinds of things that they did and continue to do at UT System. So I'm really excited for our guests to listen to this episode and see what they can take away from what Melissa shares with us. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's go do it. And hello, Melissa. How are you?
I am doing fabulous. How are y'all?
We're doing great. So we're going to open up with a little bit of a different opener this time. Raphael, what is the last movie that you watched?
Oh my goodness gracious. It was on an airplane, Conclave. That's what I watched. It was wonderful. It was very, very good.
I saw that too. Very good. And Melissa, how about you?
I was afraid you were going to ask me. I don't watch a lot of movies. By the time I sit still, I'm out.
What's the last movie you tried to watch?
Oh my gosh. Wicked?
Oh, great.
Loved it. Yeah.
Yeah. My niece loves it. I haven't made it all the way through it yet. But I've heard a lot about it from her.
Well, I don't know how many horror flick movie buffs we have listening, but the last movie I watched, my daughter roped me into watching it, and it was Heretic with Hugh Grant. I've never seen Hugh Grant in a horror role before, but he was kind of scary.
Was it good?
It was scary, pretty creepy. Well, listen, if you're joining us today, no, we did not invite you to come talk about movies. It's just a fun new way to talk about something other than the weather. Thank you, Ariana, for the tip. And
the weather would have been easier.
Exactly.
But hey, we've covered a bunch of different ideas here. Today, we're going to talk about the wonderful world of workers' compensation, which is what this podcast is really about. So, Melissa, thank you so much for joining us. Let me first off start by saying your role has changed over the past year. So you recently retired from UT System, and your role there was Associate Director of Workers' Compensation and Unemployment Insurance. And I know that was your role for the like last 6 or 7 years you were there. Before that, you'd been there for many years before that. So you really know a lot about the program, which is why we invited you. We want you to talk about the history of the program at UT System and how it evolved over the years. But now you've retired and you're not just sitting at home. And I know you've got plenty of things to do. You've got beautiful horses that I've seen pictures of and lots to keep you busy. So what are you up to now?
Yeah, so I retired in September, and I had opportunities coming at me, but I set boundaries. I was proud of myself. I said I'm not going to do anything for the rest of the year. The problem with that, as the end of the year approached, I felt like I had a deadline and I needed to make some decisions. So anybody retiring, I don't recommend doing that, because I really had this urgency of, oh my gosh, it's almost January. I've got to figure out what I'm going to do. So I started trying to answer that. I did a little soul searching. I knew I loved trying to impact the workers' comp industry. I love the people in the industry. They're like family, so it was hard being away from them. So I decided to dip my toe into it a little bit, and I'm now working, helping out with WorkCompCollege.com. I love their purpose of trying to insert the humanitarian approach to workers' comp, really focusing on the purpose of it and doing it in a kinder fashion with all system participants, including the inter-employee, working together for that. So I'm excited about that opportunity. And I've also got another little iron in the fire that I'm not quite officially announcing. It's not solely with workers' comp per se. It could be. And of course, it has something to do with horses too. So I'll just let that be there. And at some point in the future, I will make an announcement about that.
Interesting. So we'll have
Yeah.
to wait to hear what that is. Well, so I know that I've known you for, oh gosh, I forget exactly when we met, but it's been several years ago. And I've always been interested in learning more about what you were doing at UT System in Austin. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's first talk about UT Systems program. So you recently shared that they're self-insured, and up until a few years ago, I guess about 10 years ago, they did everything. They hired their claims adjusters and all that. But about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, that shifted. So tell us about that shift and what you know about the why.
Okay, I can do that. So for those of you who aren't familiar, the difference between self-insured and fully insured. So fully insured, kind of like, your auto insurance, you go out, you purchase a policy, and they are going to provide coverage for whatever you're covering. Some people go out and purchase a workers' comp policy. And what that means is you pay your premium, you may have a deductible, on that. And any claim that occurs, that company is going to handle it from cradle to grave. They will take care of paying for the medical, the indemnity benefits. For a self-insured, it is an opportunity. There's self-insured by law, which UT System is. We are given that authority by our section of the law to self-insure the workers' comp program. There's also some people that go out and get certified self-insured. So they go to the state or the regulator and they apply for it. There's you have to show financial stability. You have to apply for it. There's credit reporting. So there's things around that in order to qualify. We, by law, UT System was already qualified for that opportunity, and we took it. Kind of look at it like, so like a fully insured, look at it like your cable. You pay a price and you can watch whatever you want through the cable. You lose the opportunity to say necessarily which shows you want to watch. It's the ones they're feeding to you. But there's one price. You're able to predict it. This is what I'm going to pay. This is what I'm going to get for it. Think of self-insured like the electric company, if you will. So you're able to control that by how much you use. You can, be the dad that goes in the room and complains because, dadgummit, my daughter left the lights on again, and you can turn it off, and you're controlling what that bill might be, or what the impact of that is. It's two different things. Again, the cable company, just like the fully self-insured, you've got your policy and they're going to cover whatever comes through it. Cable, they're going to cover whatever shows you want to watch. The self-insured being the electric company, every claim that comes through or every wattage that you use is going to cost something, because for the self-insured, that you're paying dollar for dollar any expense associated with the workers' comp injury. So a bill comes in, you're going to be paying it out of the fund. And some self-insurers have retention layers. So anything after a certain set amount, then it goes out to have somebody else pay for that layer. So those are two different options available out there with different qualifications. The qualifications for the fully insured, you pay the premium, you may have a deductible. The qualifications, again, like I was saying, for the self-insured, you have to show that you are financially responsible. They may do a credit rating on you. You may have a security deposit, just to show that you can cover those claims. The claims administration for the self-insured, you've got full control over how that's going to be managed. If you're going out and purchasing a policy, they're going to take care of all of that. So just giving you a little dabble of what it is. For UT System, again, we were self-insured by law. And for many, many years, I started there I'm dating myself, I'm old, in 93. And at that time, all the adjusters, the claims assistants, everybody was employees of UT System. We act as an insurance carrier because we were self-insured. But in 2013, prior to that, we had our own claims system that lived on UT Systems mainframe. We had a relationship with UT Austin. I'm sorry, UT Austin's mainframe. We had a relationship with UT Austin where they would cut the checks for us, but things were changing. That claim system we had didn't have a place to live anymore. We had another company or another way of cutting checks, and we were concerned over the ability to get them as quick as, you know, you may have a few hours sometimes in workers' comp and you need to get money out the door. We were concerned about that. And finding the solution, we decided we would partner with a third-party administrator. But what we did is, unfortunately, 18 people, because we had the adjusters, the claims assistants at UT System, lost their jobs at UT. And we found solutions. So adjusters, claims assistants were now going to be provided by a third-party administrator. We knew we wanted control, though, because we did a good job. It wasn't that the program was lacking anything at all. We had good results from the program. We wanted to have control over that continue. So we at UT System provided the claims supervision. We did the hiring. We reviewed the claims with them. We roundtabled them, made decisions together, but under the direction of UT. Whereas normally with a third-party administrator, it's, you know, here, y'all take care of that. There may be some relationship there, but ours was extremely cohesive. And they really worked to meet what our needs were with the institutions and with the program. And it actually turned out to be extremely successful, even more so than what it was in the former model, as demonstrated by the results of the program.
Thank you for that description. That's helpful. So Melissa, thank you so much for that description and the transition of the program that you saw while you were at UT System. Since I've known you, and I had been on site and visited the office area where you had everybody there at UT System, and I noticed you introduced me to several of the adjusters and all that, and I always really marveled at how it was that hybrid program that you had a TPA, CCMSI, that had their adjusters, but they lived on site at the UT System offices. And then you also did something else that I thought was very interesting. You had an annual meeting, if you will, where you brought everybody together and you guys had like a conference, if you will, of talking about the importance of what you did. I don't want to talk more about it. I want you to describe what you did, and then I'll ask you a few questions about that.
Perfect. Yes. You know, I had been with UT since '93, so I was very familiar with the way the program was designed prior to going into this hybrid model. And because I was familiar with how well the program performed industry-wide, I had that urgency to continue as much as of that cohesiveness and that feel as possible, even though we had this hybrid relationship with a third-party administrator. We did things to maintain the continued control over the program by having the supervision again provided by UT System, with the adjusters being CCMSI. That created that connection and also that relationship and the importance of being familiar with our institutions and the people we serve and making sure we're doing right by our employees. I had a very strong urge to make sure that advocacy was a high point of the program, a focus on high integrity, doing what's right because it's always right to do what's right. And anybody who touches our program had to be familiar with what happened. It was impactful because we lost 18 of our family members. It was a family when this change happened. And that put a stamp on us. It imprinted part of what we were. And it was important for anybody coming into the program to also understand that. We also had some issues going through that transition that led us down the road of having the retreat. It was very different. We didn't have a model in the industry to look after. As far as I'm aware, nobody had gone down this road or developed a program in this manner. So we needed assistance navigating how to get to where we needed to be as we transitioned. Part of that solution was having the retreat with the facilitator. And we found that every year we would have a similar retreat with the same facilitator who guided us through this change and refinement of our program. And what it was our cost containment company, all of the employees, anybody who touches the program from there, anybody who touched the program from our TPA, as well as UT Systems staff, met together to bridge that relationship. And what it turned into is a refinement on communication. We heavily embraced the DISC assessment, learned the personalities, and over time it transitioned to not just learning to communicate with each other on our program based on our personalities, but we got so refined with it as we were talking to injured employees and our customers, we were able to identify and perfect communication based on their needs and personalities as well. And you were there at one of the retreats, Yvonne.
Well, I think I did a Zoom with Claire. We zoomed in for a segment of that. So yeah, thank you. And I remember, so what I'm hearing you say, and what we talk about a lot in our industry, is that communication is really important. And so what this retreat was focused on was helping to deepen relationships and understand the communication that you have between each other, the importance of communication with the injured employees. And so how effective was that? I mean, obviously you did it for a number of years. So did you see the results of that in a positive way?
We absolutely did. I always taught our team and viewed the program, UT Systems, some people, in fact, when I first started there as a young whippersnapper, it was explained to me as, at that time, we had 15 different institutions across the state. And then they drew like an umbrella with UT System overseeing all of those. But that's not the way I viewed it at all. I viewed it and taught my team we're really like the pavement over a caliche road to make things smoother for the institutions, because I saw each one of our institutions were very, very different. They had different purposes. MD Anderson isn't the same as UTSA, isn't the same as UT Southwestern, isn't the same as UT Tyler. And it was our responsibility, and I probably refined it when I started learning more about the communication and the different personalities. We have to adapt to what their needs are. We're there to make them better, to understand their availability, their need for resources, and to provide it to them. And the retreats and that communication style really helped us figure that out. I mean, depending on who you're talking to, if the program reports very high and you're talking to someone at an executive level, they don't have a lot of time. They need the bullet points and make decisions off of that, versus someone else who may need to go through more hoops to get what they need. We're probably going to spend a little bit more time talking through those things so that they have the tools they need to move it forward. So it really strengthened us as a program and as somebody delivering a service to people in need by understanding how to adapt that communication style based on what we were presenting.
So Ralph, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you ask some questions here. So dig in.
Thanks, Yvonne. Melissa, I want to give our listeners kind of an idea of the extensiveness of this program, right? Because most of us think, we know the University of Texas is a big university, but it's beyond just UT Austin. You're talking about 15 plus institutions all throughout the state. Help us understand, how many students, how many employees are we talking about when you say the UT system altogether?
Yeah, the program, and remember, we don't have any layers, so any claim that happened is 100% paid out of a fund, and that is developed based on a variable rate. And I'll go ahead and talk about it now. So we charge rates to our institutions. There's a variable rating system. In fact, there wasn't always. Prior to the variable rating system started in 1994. Prior to that, we charged an average rate to each institution, and the money would go into the fund, and then the dollars for workers' comp were paid out of that fund. In 1994, for example, our rates were 80 cents per $100 payroll. And then the variable rating system started, which meant our institutions were getting more creative and competitive because, one institution's not charged as much as another. And why is that? And what are they doing? So it really stimulated that creativity. But in 1994, the rate was on average, it was variable, but our average rate was 37 cents per $100 payroll. And then through that competition in 1998, we were overcapitalized for the fund. We were doing really well with the program, and the rate was actually 22 cents per $100 payroll. And we started a resource allocation program where we had so much in the fund. We started a grant-like program where we returned money back to the institutions from the fund in an effort to support safety, which in turn would mean fewer injuries, which in turn would mean less paid out of the fund, which in turn would mean continued rate reduction. We were doing so well in 2008 that we returned 40% back to the institutions in rates. We went to 12 cents per $100 payroll.
Wow.
And by the time I left in 2024, it was 8.5 cents per $100 payroll. And we continue to return money back to the institutions. In total, we returned $63 million back to them through the resource allocation program. So I tell you this as an example of what can happen through a self-insured program. It's more work, it takes more time, it takes a lot of resources, but it gives you more control to capitalize on focusing on safety, advocacy. I started incorporating that in 2014 when I took over 2015, when I started running the program. And we kept pushing on it, and it really makes a difference on the outcome, as you can see where our rates ended when I left. And I am so positive that Joanne Anderson, who took my place, is going to continue it down that road. I said it to you, Rafi. I said it to her too. I double dog dare her to continue, to blow me out of the water, because I know the program has that potential, as does she. So sit tight and watch what she does to it. But back to your original question, Rafi, what was it?
Oh God, I'm loving this. I'm loving it. What a great lesson for all of us, right? The results are just astonishing.
Mm-hmm.
So you've given us the end results. Tell me, for example, how many claims a year? How many employees covered? Things like that.
Yeah, so we are covering over 140,000 employees within the system. There's, I believe, 250,000 students, if I'm not mistaken. So there is a whole lot in the risk management department under the direction of Phil Dindy at System. The most incredible boss. Learned so much from him and the program, which is a phenomenal program. A risk management program, you want to report as high as possible because it spreads across so many departments and areas, and then the institutions. Phil was reporting up to the chancellor. So it was at that level, he's just a brilliant man that has mad management skills. He's great. And that's a product of what he's done with the program, and thus the workers' comp too. Very blessed to have worked under him.
How awesome. So based on those numbers, right? Starting off at 80 cents per $100 payroll, all the way down to 8.5 cents. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, and you've indicated already, ownership of the program, ownership of those injuries, therefore a reduction, I gather, in the number of accidents and the claims. Is that fair to say?
That had a lot to do with it. We also realized we had a lot of resources available to us. We've got medical schools, we've got doctors, we've got really, really smart people that provide an opportunity for first aid care. Maybe a day, yes, you have a claim. Yes, we're going to report it to the employer. But if we have availability to doctors and the injured employees want to treat or go to them to get the Band-Aid or the wound cleaned, it doesn't need to come to us as a workers' comp claim. So we started learning over time. We've got these resources. There's no reason to have it come over here and go through a bunch of red tape. If it gets complicated, they need more advanced treatment. At that time, it can come over to us and we're going to take care of them. But we have the resources to take care of them through the medical schools with doctors if they choose to go that route. So we had a claim, but it didn't have to generate an expense that money's going to go from one pocket and into another unnecessarily. We also really capitalized on the return to work programs. Some of the institutions got really, really creative, whereas they had banks of jobs in different departments and you knew to go there. But what we did is we learned a means of putting a value to that. And remember the variable rating system. Once we introduced that, our institutions got very competitive. Number one in expense actually went to number one in with the lowest rates overall that time. And I've got another institution that's like, we're going to overcome that. So using that same vein, we learned that there's a way to put a value to savings or to the return to work program performance. I came up with an average rate per day at each institution. And for every accommodation, light duty day that was there, I put that value together. And I presented that at our executive meetings in front of the chancellor. This is what our savings were in front of our executive board. The last year I was there, it was $2 million that would have been paid out of the fund had they not accommodated those restrictions. And it went from 1.6, 1.4 million. And then when I left, it was 2 million because they saw those dollars savings matter. And I was able to put an amount to that and show that, and then we broke it out by institution. So that, and we did a couple of peer reviews where some of the institutions actually went in and did an analysis of the workers' comp program at the institutions and offered feedback and suggestions. And we had meetings with the institutions where they would throw up a problem and find solutions, and they were working together. In fact, at one point, one of our academic institutions was developing a relationship with the health institution for assistance in OCMED. Hey, can you send one of your doctors over here and hang out for a while in case we have an injury or provide support because we don't have those resources. So they really got innovative with each other, and it shows through the program, that availability.
Melissa, the medical care provided to the injured employees, was that also done through, you've indicated, UT system has a number of medical schools and hospitals throughout the state. Was that generally provided through that, or were they private providers away from the university system?
We would use those providers. I mean, we are one of the top schools in the state and one of the leading in the country for providing doctors. So it's, why would we not use those resources to provide care if the employee chooses to do so? So we over time figured that out. Some of the doctors do bill, and it, you're taking from the fund and returning it back. Some of them, we're already getting paid. If they need to pop in and get a wound cleaned, they can pop in and get a wound cleaned. We still had a workers' comp claim at the institution. It just didn't need to come over to the carrier and impact the rating system until it needed more, the injured employee needed more advanced care. So it wasn't that we weren't taking a claim or anything like that, or saying you can't report it. They were getting quicker care if they choose to stay on site and go to one of the doctors and get the care they needed.
Sure. How incredibly smart, right? Like you've said already, you've got the resources. Why not take advantage of that? You've got world-class hospitals and doctors. You're a leader amongst not just this nation, but the entire world.
Yeah.
In producing doctors. Why not take advantage of that great facility and talent you've got already? Absolutely.
Yeah. And we weren't forcing them to go there at all. I mean, they had a choice to go wherever they wanted, but if you want to go in the door right next door and get that taken care of and looked at, we've got the resources and we'll let you use them.
Wow.
So let me, great conversation. Ralph and I often say on this podcast that, we can always talk to our guests for hours and hours, but we need to wrap it up and close. But just for comparison, we have had another self-insured program administrator on, Joseph Sousa, who is the work comp program manager for City of San Diego. So we've looked at City of San Diego and their program and how they do it. Of course, the environment is very different between California and Texas. Let's talk about a couple of those differences. So you've been talking about how in Texas in your program, you utilize some of your own doctors in your system, because obviously that makes a lot of sense. But how else what are some of the other differences in Texas in terms of how the program is actually administered?
So our claims are open forever. They don't close.
Right. You don't settle claims.
We don't settle claims, which again, to me, that highlights the importance of communication, setting the expectation up front with the injured employee, letting them know, you've got treatment for the injury, but it's got to be specific to the injury. And there may be, and having that communication, if there's a large gap in treatment, maybe there's been 3 or 4 years and you're coming back, we're going to have to take a look at that to make sure it's still related. Setting those expectations up front is very, very important, because we don't want to get into a battle of whether it is or is not. We need to be upfront and honest with each other. But I think that's probably one of the biggest things, is that our claims never close from California. They also have a network opportunity in California, but we've got a dispute resolution process because our claims never close. So we've got a pretty lengthy process, not lengthy, but involved process at the administrative level before it gets to district court. So having a good relationship, again, the communication as you go through that. We really don't want claims to go through dispute resolution because it's a hassle factor for the injured employee. So having that conversation up front and being honest and working together with the system participants as we navigate that to make sure it doesn't have to go down that road. And we kept a close eye on that as well.
Well, and something that I heard that is very much in common is a huge emphasis on safety, advocacy, advocating for the right thing and the right thing at the right time. But I mean, I don't think we can say it enough, Ralph, that, the focus on prevention of claims is obviously something that every employer can do and ought to do. And then having that advocacy model in place. Ralph, what else would you ask Melissa before we wrap it up?
It's what's amazing to me, Yvonne, right? And I think, Melissa, what an amazing program that you've created to provide each of these institutions the incentives, right, to do good and do right. And proof's in the pudding. Look at these numbers, right? And now you've got institutions competing. Who's going to be the healthier one? Who's going to be the safest one? Who's going to be the winner of the, return better dollars, if you will? I love that. Conceptually, isn't that what we all of our employers want, right? That says so much about the process you've created over there. It's just incredible.
Yeah, and the safety, Yvonne, is huge. We had regular meetings with the safety group as well and the workers' comp, because it really does go hand in hand. And I think sometimes programs don't see it as such. I would love to have the program put out of business, because we don't want to have any workers' comp claims.
Right.
We want our employees to be whole and safe, and have the gainful employment they need for their families. And that's the number one focus. And working together in that regard is super important.
But man, I mean, we often hear in I always call it our lovely, wonderful industry, because it is. There's so full of wonderful people. But we often hear things like, workers' compensation, there's no innovation, or it's not enough innovation. I can't think, and Raphael, I'm going to challenge you, or like Melissa says, I'm going to double dog dare you to show me another example. I mean, what else do you call this hybrid system that they put in place at UT System, other than a really creative and innovative approach to handling the workers' compensation claims? I wish we could create more of that kind of thinking across the board.
I totally agree with you, Yvonne. If this isn't outside the box thinking about how to solve a problem and how to do right, and every institution is different, right? You're thinking about it, the way you go about it, your own resources. I mean, this is the most creative mechanism we've ever heard of in trying to make sure you're delivering benefits, you're taking care of your folks, and look at the results. They speak for themselves. Really, really remarkable.
And that right there, that's what enticed me to flunk out of retirement. Well, it matters to me. And it's not I don't own it. UT doesn't own it. It's a passion. And I want to give back. That's what I want to give back to the industry, is that innovative way to focus on doing what's right. That's my passion. That's my purpose. And that's why I started putting regular clothes and makeup on again, because it matters to me. And that's why I wanted to be part of the work comp college.
Well, thank you. We can't thank you enough for all that you have done and all that you continue to do. But I want to say, I can hear it now. I'm used to getting those call outs of, oh, Yvonne, it's really great for somebody like Melissa, who worked at one of the largest public education systems in the country, that have all these different resources and is so big. Let's talk about how a smaller employer, you might not have the ability to put in that competitive angle, but doesn't mean that you can't think about it in the same way, right? You got to think about how to keep your employees safe and come up with a solution that works in your environment, whether it's a small, employer, or a very vast, large employer like yours, or City of San Diego.
Well, it's funny you say that. I know we need to, but there were 14, it changed some. So 14, 15, 13 institutions that were under us, but they weren't all big, and they weren't all medical schools. And some of them were very, very tiny and didn't have the funding that the larger institutions did. But I would still sit down with them and say, don't just sit there and tell me you can't. Let's brainstorm this and figure out how we can. And I've got this saying, my team would say it, go until no. Let's keep going. Let's keep dreaming until we hit the hard no. Let's shoot for the moon and come back as low as we can, because then we're going to be really incredible. But you've got to at least try.
Love that. Go until no. Yeah.
Doesn't hurt to ask, because you're already on a no if you don't.
That's right. That's right. So we encourage everybody to think outside the box. That's what this podcast is about. It's bringing forward solutions that have worked, listening to different perspectives. So Melissa, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing briefly your experience with UT System. And I look forward to seeing you in the coming months and years. But before we close, we always like to finish. So we talked a little bit about something fun in the beginning, but let's wrap it up with something fun as well. What is something that Melissa does in your spare time to keep yourself fresh and recharged, and especially now that you're navigating retirement and how much to work versus not? What do you do to keep yourself fresh and charged?
Of course, my horses. Well, I have one now. One of my horses passed.
Oh, sorry.
My muddy guy passed away. And I'm looking for another one now, which has been a lot of fun. And then as I retired, I just decided to actually delve in a little bit more. I'm working with a trainer. So Laddie, my other horse, and I are learning a lot, building a really good relationship, and I'm learning a lot from the trainer. So hopefully I've got a prospect of a friend for Laddie that I'm going to go look at in a few weeks. So I may be introducing y'all to a new horse soon, but that is my zen. The smell of the horse, the calm you have to be around them. It's just my zen.
Awesome.
That's awesome. It really is. Thank you so much.
Of course. It's good seeing y'all.
Same here. I love spending time with you. I always learn from you, Melissa. I really do. I've taken 2 pages of notes, listening to you, absorbing. It really is. It's so meaningful. It's so impactful. Because Yvonne said it in her question, you don't have to be the largest institution to learn that there are methods and ways. If you allow yourself to think outside this box, look what you can do. Yeah.
Yep. Totally.
Yeah,
agree.
and I think it's also important that retreat that you did that I asked you a bazillion questions about it because I was so intrigued, when I first learned about it. But I think those kinds of things really go a long way when you take the time. We all are busy. Work does not slow down. There's more and more and more expected of us every year that goes by. And I don't think that's going to change. So, but, I always tell people it's about what you prioritize, right? If you prioritize the importance of bringing your team together, learning about each other, communicating with each other so you can become better together, I think that's what it's all about. And so everybody just has to learn that you must prioritize these things if you want to excel in what you do.
And thank you for saying that, because the time is the biggest enemy. But you can either set aside a moment to find a quicker, easier way to get things done, or you can continue to have it compounding on you. And at some point, you're going to either take the break or you're going to sink. Yep. But you got to it's kind of like money. Sometimes you got to spend money to make money. Same with time. Sometimes you got to take a little time to get a little more time.
That's right.
And it's just a conscious decision that has to be made by management.
Right. And those people that are influencing the program. So again, we can't thank you enough. It's always fun to see you. It's never enough time. I hope to see you in person here real soon.
That would be amazing.
And like we always say, until next time, hasta luego.
Bye, y'all. Take care.
Bye, Melissa. Thank you.
Bye-bye.